You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is time for a brand spanking new broadcast week. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you got out and about, away from some screens, saw some friends, some family, just maybe saw a little bit of outside fresh air. Always a good thing. But now we're back. We're ready. We're raring to go with another broadcast week here on the network. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the THEOptionsInsider.com. And again, if you haven't been there in a little bit, a lot of great content coming out there throughout the day, including a lot of you love the most actives. It's worth a visit there at least a couple of times a day just for that. Then, of course, access to all of our shows here on the network. If you like that, anything else we do here on the network, make sure if you're listening on the content side, throw a like, a star, a comment. All that stuff does help new people continue to discover the fun that is the network out there. And if you want more fun, just gave away the February Pro Trading Crate back on VolViews on Friday. That was pretty fun. So I haven't done it on VolViews too often. Like to mix it up. Like to spread the Pro Trading Crate love throughout the shows here on the network, so it can't just be monopolized by one. So congratulations. I think it was Chi-Town Indy who won it last month, so congratulations to you. Welcome to all the new folks who've joined us over the past couple of weeks out there. Love to see all the new names and faces in there. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more about all the fun you're missing out on if you're not hanging out over there. But now, listeners, as I mentioned, it is time to commence our broadcast week. You know we do it in fun and high style. So I'm going to introduce my compatriots now, give them time to get their hands on their buzzers. First, we are joined this week by the uncleist of Mike's, easy for me to say, by the uncleist of Mike's, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, as well as by the returning Rock Lobster, a.k.a. Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. And now we have migrated this segment away from strictly focused on 80s wrestling. So it has been a more competitive contest because we have the Rock Lobster joining us. That said, well, I'll get to it in a second. First, let's fire up the music. Producer, here we go. All right. A little bit of 80s wrestling music. Now, I said at the top of the segment here, we have migrated away from an 80s wrestling segment, except for this week. Events have conspired to draw us back into the realm of 80s wrestling. It's an all 80s themed trivia, so that includes 80s wrestling. So that said, before we go in, because I know Uncle Mike will get this one with ease, I will give the Rock Lobster an attempt to go first. I will say this, Mr. Rock Lobster, I know you can name your top tier 80s wrestlers, your Hogans and your Andres and those guys. But beyond that, I will ask you this question, give you a chance to get some points today. When a wrestler comes out, sometimes someone, this is just for Andrew now, so Uncle Mike, sit on your buzzer. sometimes when a wrestler would come out, he would be accompanied by someone. What is that role called? What is that position called in the wrestling world? You have a wrestler and they're what?
A second?
What is it? What is it? A duel? Pistols at dawn? He's my second. He checks my gun.
That's the only thing I could think of. Clearly, I was mistaken.
Andrew really didn't watch wrestling. Whatever doubts I had about that, I believe it now.
That might be the best answer you've given us yet on all of these segments. That were second. I haven't heard that since 1674, the great duels of the day.
Exactly. Well, the last duel was
yeah, since Aaron Burr.
Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah, since Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. They could have used a better second that day. All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, I know you know that answer, but that's not your question. Your question is special. It's a bit of a sad one. Of course, the 80s wrestling world, it's been beset by tragedy almost from the beginning. A good number of these guys did not even survive the 80s, let alone survive the 90s, survive all the way through till today. A handful have made it through till today. Until this past week, we lost another one just last week. Now, this person, Uncle Mike, he wasn't a top-tier guy. He wasn't even really a mid-carder. He was kind of more of a secondary player, if you will. But he had a moment. He had a brief moment in the run with the old $1 million belt. He was known as the valet to the $1 Million Man. Who did we lose last week, Uncle Mike?
Oh, I didn't know we lost him, but would that be Virgil?
Yes, he passed away last week, pretty tragically, yes. I thought you knew that.
Oh my goodness, that's too bad. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we did. So yeah, Virgil, yet another one down. Not many left. You've got Hogan and Hogan. Not Jake the Snake is still kicking around somewhere. A few others, but yeah, it's getting pretty slim pickings out there. So yes, alas, we lost the best. He wasn't a manager. This one was actually a valet. So there you go. That would another one I would have accepted for you, Mr. Rocklauser. But yes, the sad passing of one Virgil as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And a bit of a weird one out there today, kind of a little bit of red and now kind of mixed as we're kicking off the show. The S&P is fighting to stay green. It's pretty much unched up 0.01% right now. The Dow off about 0.15 and the NASDAQ off a little, almost 0.2. So not exactly a strong or even really strongly directional start to the week. We're kind of just mostly adrift. A lot of the red came earlier this morning from the big news out of Apple just getting slammed by that EU fine. They're coming for Apple today quite aggressively, off nearly 6 handles, a little over 3%. And Andrew, I was tweeting Andrew about it, but yeah, Brian and I were just talking on Options Oddities. He was going on and on about that $7 straddle in Apple, 7 3/4, and whether we should buy it or not. We actually did a poll about it, and lo and behold, they're off nearly $6 already today. So that 1 month straddle looking pretty good right now in Apple that we were talking about. Everything else looking kind of unched. VIX at about 1340 when we kicked off the show, down about 1/10 of a point. VVIX at a 79, also unched. VXX 13.5, down a whopping 1/4 of a point. UVXY 680, literally unched. SVIX 41.25, up a whopping 1/4 of a point. And UVIX 9 3/4, down about 1/4 of a point. So all of that a long way around is saying not a heck of a lot kicking things off outside of the Apple news. Mr. Uncle Mike, if you have any enduring memories before we start of one valet Virgil, I heard he had some rough times towards the end. Very ill, obviously, and also desperate for money, having a lot of issues in his life. So another sad end to an 80s wrestler. But if you have any thoughts about his run with the $1 Million Man, probably the highlight of his career there. And then B, was catching your eye in the market, sir.
Well, not many people know this, but he actually changed his name in the WCW and became Vincent.
Yes.
At WCW.
Yes, he did. I learned that just recently after he died. They showed a clip of his, and they showed him coming out as Vincent. Once again, bodyguard to Ted DiBiase.
It was good. I mean, it's some of the name changes always fascinated me because I like how the 1 2 3 kid couldn't be the 1 2 3 kid anymore, so they just added up the numbers and called him 6. That was another one of my favorite name changes that existed back in that era. But very sad. on the passing of Virgil. He definitely made the character of the $1 Million Man what it was in a lot of ways. He was very much the Robin to his Batman, or whatever way with which you want to look at it. It was definitely something that it was sad to. It's very sad to hear about it. And this is the first time that I've actually have heard about this, so haven't really had a chance to digest it as of yet. But Virgil, rest in peace. You were a big part of the '80s wrestling scene on things. Yeah, the big story of the day from what's lighting up my tape is Apple. I got this red on the screen right now, and it's at the top of the page because it's in alphabetical order, and it's Apple. You don't see that very often. Apple down over 3% on the day. So that's something with which it's I don't see how it's possible for the market to be up at all. But somehow we actually are slightly up on the day as I look at my screen right now with the S&P. And so with Apple, it's kind of one of those things to where it's such a big part of everything that that's something that can be dragging down the market in some ways. But ironically, if you look at XLK, the technology sector, we actually are up on the day slightly in XLK, the technology ETF, I should say. And the reason for that, why would that be? Well, what's it called? NVDA. NVIDIA is up $43 on the day, and it's up 5% on the day. So that's definitely something there, no doubt about that. So we do have NVIDIA making actually a pretty decent sized move even for NVIDIA. So we do have that. Now, of course, the counter to that, we have some up, we have some down today. Tesla down over 7% on the day, down at the 187 level again. So we are having some pullbacks on the day. But the other part of the day, or the other part of the market that we are getting some traction, we actually have a little bit of upside in XLF. And so leading the first one that's popping out when I'm seeing in the financial sector, which is where XLF is, would be JP Morgan. That's up over $2 on the day. So we're getting some movement there. And then the other thing that is also catching my eye today that's of interest is that we get a lot of, whenever we allocate people to small cap or mid cap, one of the things and we have to explain it to clients a lot of times if we do this, okay, sometimes this is going to beat the S&P 500, sometimes it's not. There's cases to be made to where small cap stocks have beaten the S&P over time, whatever way you want to look at it. But what I think is pretty interesting today is that we have the S&P 500, the large caps, 80% of all U.S. business and commerce. It's up slightly on the day, relatively flat. But if you're looking at other things that are kind of the other parts of the market, we have IWM, which tracks the Russell 2000, the little stocks, the small caps, I should say, up roughly 0.5%. But the redheaded stepchild of all sectors, the one you never hear anybody talking about, MDY, the S&P mid caps, that's up over 1% on the day. So be interesting to see if maybe this can be the start of the mid-cap rally of 24 that takes it to the stratosphere in the mid-cap world. So we have that going on today. And then the final thing that's of interest is that we have silver starting to make a little bit of a run again. One thing I was able to do going into this year, because silver had a down year last year, we were able to adjust our risk reversal or our modified risk reversal downward. And so after 22, we actually get some we will get the full upside with silver. We have hedges set aside 8 ways from Sunday on the thing. But after 22, it's all upside for us in our silver position. So very excited about that. Silver's kind of like a thief in the night. It'll bore you to death for, I think I said 5 years back in 2015, 10 years in 2020. So now I'm going to say almost 15 years, silver will bore you to death. But then at some point in time, it comes like a thief in the night and it'll all of a sudden be at $50. So that's my hope anyway. But if not, we're prepared for it nonetheless. So that is what I am seeing in today's marketplace.
Funny you mentioned the S&P mid-caps. We have talked about those before on TWIFO. They pop up on our movers and shakers every now and then. Obviously not really a hot options commodity, so we don't really dig into it too often, but it does move quite a bit. So maybe this is the year. You're right. Maybe It's the year for everyone to get hyped about mid caps. Let's go out now to the shores of Maine. Mr. Rock Lobster, if I have ever challenged to a duel, you can be my second. How does that sound?
So what do they actually call the guy that goes out with a wrestler?
He's a manager. He's usually a manager. In the case of Virgil, he was a special case. He was a valet because he was being an assistant to a rich
manager
guy.
or valet would have been.
Mostly, they're 99.9% of the time are they managers. Virgil was pretty much the one. Yeah. He was the one valet.
I didn't know that. I guess, yeah, because, the second, isn't it the ring guy in a boxing match is the second? Or is he the corner guy?
They have corner men in boxing.
Yes.
Yeah. You can call them all seconds if you like.
Clearly, I have to say I have really never watched. I don't think
you did bring a good chuckle to me with that one, so I thank you for that.
This after all, this is education and entertainment here on the Options Insider Radio Network. So I'm glad that I could be of service in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, WWE has sports entertainment. Why don't we call it option entertainment?
There we go. It's the old.
I'm ready about that, Longo, just to make a channel, man. Let's start doing video.
There we go. That'll really drive all the folks in.
Yes, exactly. That'll scare everybody.
They want to stare at the Rock Lobster all day long.
Yeah. I think the fact that we're just the voice adds to the mystery of the whole thing.
Adds to the allure. Adds to the allure, sir. Yes.
So I would say, what am I watching? Well, I believe we are somewhat, we're somewhat in the thrall of Powell. The Supreme Court laid down the 9-0 ruling on Trump being elected. As long as that October future is still 20-something and it sticks out like a sore thumb, the market does look at the elections or, the potential of volatility around the election. So I don't know if that was expected, but I don't know. It didn't move the market much, let's say. So I guess that's one thing down election-wise anyway. Well, now we'll keep maybe, somehow plod forward. From a market point of view, so Powell speaks Wednesday, I believe he does this. Is it Humphrey Hawkins or he's got to testify in front of Congress to the de rigueur shakedown where all the politicians try to score points to make themselves sound really smart. And since, let's see, they're adding $1 trillion to the national debt every quarter now. Where that money is going, don't know. It actually, I'm trying to think of the hole that they put it in at this point. It must be awfully big, because I don't see any of it. So that probably, I think that still keeps the market somewhat off balance. But still close to all-time highs. So, we're only a couple of ticks off. AI continues to make everything rip. When do people stop buying it? I have absolutely no idea, but I have managed to not get in the way of it. The only thing I will say is like a pretty serious changing of the guard. Tesla is off today, I guess, on Chinese sales, really strong competition from China. And Apple continues to kind of grind lower, Apple and Google. And is AI going to replace Google? I don't know. Well, Google obviously should benefit, right? But maybe that will bring in more competitors for Google. Apple lost the EU is always fighting American big tech. Like Europeans haven't come up with a big tech company in like forever, basically. When was the last one? I don't know. I don't see them. But they keep finding the American ones. I guess it makes them feel good. But Apple's down. Oh man, I closed my put spreads last week too. That would have made some money. But when you look at it, it's like, while Apple will undoubtedly benefit from AI, I don't, it's hard to see how Apple is going to create the AI growth engine. I don't see how that happens, but it could. But right now, the market is definitely, it's down a solid 25 points from the top. So that is a good 10% from a couple months ago. I think what it peaked in November. So, I think market leadership is now moving to NVIDIA. So I think now, the chip sector is kind of, everybody's like, oh, wait a minute, you're going to need like infinite amount of these things to do all this stuff. So you're seeing like, a changing of the guard. I wrote about it last week in Option Pit. When you see ARK K outperforming Apple by a substantial amount over a 3-month period of time, something's not right. So, maybe it's just time for Apple. Again, this multiple compression in Apple can certainly happen. Can it go from a 30 PE to a 20 PE and still be a great company? Sure, but maybe the 30 PE gets a little heavy at the $3 trillion level. So I think right now, we're in kind of this, when you have kind of rotating leadership, maybe money's starting to go to some other places that they think, are going to grow out of the I wouldn't say the recession, but sort of you would start to see some more earnings gains out of other companies just besides the Magnificent Seven. The money's going to have to leave those bigger stocks and to go and, and start to go into the other stocks as people are sitting on substantial gains in those. So I think it feels like sector rotation. It's a Monday, so the weekend effect, the VIX is up a little bit, but you're not going to see I would say a VIX collapse until after the Fed testimony Wednesday. And then we could actually see like what I would guess would probably be the low print for the week, or the March cycle probably comes if Powell says all the nice stuff, because I don't see how rates go down before June, and I don't think they come down this year because of government spending. So, but that would probably ease volatility somewhat, because now we have a kind of lack of news, lack of everything. The election's kind of, and it seems like we got just the same two candidates we had 4 years ago, which is hard to believe, but that's what we got. And we keep plodding on. So I think plodding on means vol lower, market probably higher, but maybe, like I said, the old school, phones, social media, all that, although Meta still is kind of flying. But other than that, I think semiconductors, it feels like no top with those. And I'm happy just to ride them. I'm not adding any more semi stuff to what I got, but it's fun watching it go up, I guess. And I think that's where we are. Until there's a reason to sell it, or people, don't think the potential is there. I'm just waiting for NVIDIA to go to 1,000, just because it's so close, and it's almost too deliciously close not to get there. At this point, it's only $134 away. For NVIDIA, that's nothing. So anyway, I guess we're waiting for Jensen to sell some stock, and then we'll then he could probably just sell a little bit of his holdings, and maybe $1 billion worth is nothing for him at this point. His holdings are probably worth $100 billion at this point. So he has to sell something so he can go buy some. He can be like all the other guys and buy some farmland in the middle of the country. But anyway, but at this point, what stops chips from ever winding higher? I guess they pull back at some point, but it just hasn't happened yet.
It has not indeed, and doesn't seem to be happening today. Spoiler for our most actives in a little bit, listeners. But first, let's kick things off as we are wont to do out in the land of the major indices. Let's go out to VIX land first. Is VIX lighting up the tape today? The answer is no. Is it completely asleep at the wheel today either? The answer is also no. It's kind of in the middle of the road. In fact, it's right around halfway to its ADV, so it's pretty much lining up with expectations. Right around 340,000 contracts on the tape right now. The ADV, a 715 out there right now, listeners. So again, pretty much close to hanging out there. Oh, looks like our friends are back once again. It's got the 1x5 is going up again. Looks like maybe not quite 1x5, more like 1x3 right now. We got the May 22 47 half. Usually it's 1x5 they do it, but we have 132,000 of those combined going up, 100,000 alone of the May 47 halves. If you've been listening to Vol Views, you know that 47 half strike, and just about every month is just loaded up to the gills as a result of this ratio spread that's been going up here for size. Going up again today. Apparently, they could be rolling, taking one off, though. I'll have to go look and see it. They probably were open on May already. I'll have to go look and see to find out. But that is where 130,000 of the 340,000 contracts are going up there. Without that, probably would be a pretty sleepy day. SPY was looking surprisingly sleepy as of a few minutes ago. Let's see if it's kicked into higher gear a little bit. It was at 3.6 million a few minutes ago. Now it's at 3.83. That is still pretty light. Usually we expect to see SPY north of 4 million, if not around 4.5 million by this time of the day. So a little bit light out there today for SPY. The ADV, 8.63 million out there. The S, same deal. Pretty light in the S as well. 1.35 million on the tape right now. It's been a while since we've seen the S well shy of the 1.75 million. I just racked it up again to see if they've added a little bit more. And yeah, just in the last few minutes, it's up to 1.45 million. Still not even 1.5 million. Usually expect to see them 1.75 million, if not higher, this time of day. The ADV, 3.21 million. Will they get there today? Who knows? Seems kind of light today. Small caps, IWM, also looking pretty light out there today. They were at 548,000 contracts. By the way, they're up about 0.4% today. So they're feeling a little bit of their oats today out there in small caps land. And in terms of volume, not exactly feeling their oats. They're at 578. They've managed to climb to 601,000 in the last couple of minutes out there. The ADV, 1.38 million. And last but not least, we got our old friend, the Qs. They were at 1.86 million just a few minutes ago. They're just within spitting distance of 2 million now, 1.98 million. You know the Qs, they like to hang out a little bit north of 2, right around 2.2 million. They're probably the most predictable of this bunch for this time of the show. And then they spend the rest of the day getting the rest of their ADV out there. But everyone's fixated on single names these days as well, given the fact that we just came out of a hot earnings season. We still have some hot names popping off. We'll get to that in a minute. Is it a banger day on the single name front? The answer is yeah, kind of. Decent. It's respectable, all things considered. 290,000, so just a blip below 300K. That's certainly respectable. That gets us to our old friend, the Amazonians, the newest, the hottest, the sexiest new member of the Dow. Are you into the Dow now that Amazon's there, listeners? I'm curious. Hit us up, let us know. Amazon not looking that sexy today. 177.90, off about a third of a buck on the day, but a good for 290,000 contracts and the number 10 spot. Number 9, right back to the chips we go. SMCI, aka Super Micro Computer Inc. Say that one 5 times fast. 11.17 today, up only 211 handles, or 23.5%. My goodness, they're going to make their way into the S&P, and that'll do it. Goodness, this thing has been on the rampage just over the last couple of months. Let's see, over the last month, how much are we up? We're up 70% in SMCI. It was 663 on February 5th. Now on March 4th, it is 1130. My goodness, the madness out there. PE nearly a 90, listeners, and not stopping anybody out there. Number 8, keeping it in not chips really, but AI related names. This is Palantir. 24.14, off about 80 cents, or about a little over 3, about 3.2% today. So they kind of came for Palantir today. Interesting, because all the rest of the AI-related names had a nice pop today, but not Palantir. Feeling a little bit of the dark side. Number 8, 363,000 contracts on the tape. Number 7, off to crypto land we go. It's Mara. You know it's a day that ends in Y. Mara is rocking and rolling today. It's at 25.40, off about $1.50 today. So about 5.6%. This thing just moves at an incredible clip. Today, 389,000 contracts on the tape. You want a little more insight into that? Stay tuned for the crypto rundown coming up after this show. We'll get into all that fun with Mr. Greg Magadini, diving into all the madness out there in the world of crypto. And spoiler alert, there's a lot of madness. It's a fun one. Number 6, my old stomping grounds. It's Intel, back to chip land. It's 401,000 contracts on the tape for Intel. 46.13, up about 2 1/3, about 5.25%. So a nice pop out there today. More buyers than sellers at the end of the day, kid. Number 5, out to Alphabet, Class A, 429,000 contracts on the tape. 132 and about a half, off about 460 or 3 1/3%. Alphabet's kind of been wearing it a little bit of late. Of course, they had their not exactly stellar results from their AI last week. And if anyone needs this stuff to really perform, it's kind of Alphabet. They need it really. If you think of the strategic threats to their search dominance, AI is certainly the biggest one to come along in a while. So they need to be at the vanguard of that just for self-preservation. And at least so far, it doesn't seem to be materializing. But again, it is early days. Nonetheless, they're coming for Google today. 429,000 contracts. And the number 5 spot, number 4, used to be the bottom half of our chip zone. These days, who knows where it's coming in? It could top the list some days like it did last week. Today, it's number 4. It's AMD, 207 even, up about 4 1/3 or 2.1%. Good for 784,000 contracts. And the number 4 spot, number 3, we were just talking about this. It's the fruit company. All it takes for Apple to be, dare I say it, relevant again from an options perspective and make it even into the top 3 is only a $2 billion euro fine and a little over 3% sell-off, trading right around 174 right now. That's all it takes to catapult them from the bottom half of our top 10 back into the top half again. 1.05 million. Haven't seen an M handle on Apple in a while, but doing it today, not exactly for the best reasons for all the Apple bulls out there, but nonetheless, looking at like some decent volume today. A far cry from their 52-week high of just a tick below 200. They're well below that now. Interesting stuff out there. Number 2, Uncle Mike just talked about them. They're going XDiv. It's NVIDIA. They're lighting the tape up again. $43 to the upside. 865, in 3/4, up about 5 1/4%. What's 5% to NVIDIA? It's a rounding error. 1.37 million on the tape for them. And you know what? Even still, nothing can usurp the king yet again today. It is Tesla. 1.69 million on tape. Tesla, they're coming for Tesla today. 187 and about a third, off 15 1/4. So everyone thought, okay, they're rallying back to 200. Maybe things are settling out there. Nope. Right back down 15 handle, 7.5%. Bad news out of China. Also, some issues with that ongoing debate over Musk's ridiculous pay package. All that combining for a little bit of downside action. More sellers than buyers, kid, in Tesla at the end of the day. So a lot to unpack out there. In terms of earnings, we are not done, listeners. Stuff popping off this week. NIO tomorrow. So you want more electric vehicle insight. NIO's there for you. Target tomorrow, as well as Nordstrom's and Box. Wednesday, Foot Locker and Victoria's Secret. It's a weird combo. And then Thursday, we've got Kroger and Burlington and Costco and Marvell. So still some names popping off out there, listeners. We got, just because we like you folks, hot off the presses from our friends over there at Oratz. We've got some names popping off this week, including good old GGAL, Grupo Financio Galicia S.A., ticker symbol GGAL, GGAL. Trading 22 1/3 today. They're popping off before the bell. They went into their announcement about 22.30, so they literally haven't budged. They were pricing in nearly 7%, and they're unched right now. So that's some dramatic underperformance. A Target tomorrow, 155 1/4 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 10.85. In the past, they moved about 12 1/3. So about $1.50 worth of less juice on the old Target front. That's kind of interesting. Is the vol gone in retail? I guess we'll find out. Box tomorrow after the bell, 26.5 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 270. In the past, they've moved to $1.50. So, wow, that's a fair amount of extra juice in Box. And then let's go out to Foot Locker, 34.60 is where they were trading. They're the sixth before the bell. They're pricing in 5 1/4. In the past, they've moved 4.90. So, not a huge evolution on their earnings front out there. Nordstrom's, if you want a little bit higher end retail, fifth after the bell, 20 3/4. They're pricing in 2 1/4. In the past, they moved 262. So a little bit less juice there. Let's keep rolling really quickly. Let's go out to Costco, big box, warehouse retail, seventh after the bell. 750 pretty much is where they were trading. They're pricing in 32.88. In the past, they've moved 20.5 bucks. So that's a heck of a lot of extra juice, about 12 1/3. That's a lot of juice in Costco. Intriguing. I'll have to go dig in there, see what's going on. You know what's going on in the season, listeners, is a banger of a season. 129% is where we're hanging out right now. I can't recall another season that has been this lofty, this far into the cycle. And we've seen spikes above 100% in the past. Usually it's week 1, week 2 when we only have a handful of names reporting and the data set is still pretty small. This long into the season with 862 names reporting, hanging out at 129%, I cannot recall seeing that before. Listen, we've been doing this for a little while, so that is impressive. You want to see that for yourselves, theoptionsinsider.com is the place to go. Click on the Options News and Articles tab to begin your journey to the dark side. As we continue our journey into the wild side, right on into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the odd block.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's get weird. Let's get wild. Mr. Rock Lobster, it's been a while since we talked about our first name here. Good old AIG. You remember this one? It's been a while, sir.
Yes, it has. A long time.
Yeah.
Like 14 years.
Something like that. It's been quite a while. Let's see what's going on in AIG to catch our eye of Sauron's attention today, listeners. AIG, you know the ticker. It's just AIG. 73, pretty much even, up about $0.25 today. So not exactly a banger day for AIG. On the year, let's see. What have they been up to, listeners? A pretty decent year for them. A year ago, they were trading $60, pretty much even. They came for it during the whole contagion fear, of course, for obvious reasons. Sold it off to about $47. Actually, 45.5 was about the low. And then ever since then, it's been pretty much straight up. So that 45.5 up to the high pretty much coming today, $73.44, right at the high right now. So yeah, it's been pretty much straight up ever since then. A pretty good year for AIG, up about 21% exactly from a year ago. So Mr. Rock Lobster, it seems like somebody has forgotten about the whole 2008 debacle, and they're just diving right back in saying, give me some of that tasty, tasty upside in AIG that came in and scooped 9,009 of the April 80s, 8 O's. So almost exactly 7 handles out of the money, listeners. They paid 40 cents, so a little bit off the offer. The stock at the time was 72 3/4, so they got a little bit of a move in the stock. So I know the Rock Lobster will like that. There are no earnings in this. The earnings are shortly after expiration. They're on May 2nd, so they don't get any earnings in these calls. But they obviously liked this trade because they came back in and did it again and again to the tune of about 21,000 total on the day. Mr. Rock Lobster, what are your thoughts on this upside call palooza in your new favorite, old favorite, AIG?
You know what? I have to say, it is not an unreasonable purchase, although it is, I mean, unreasonable, I guess, is a, let's see, I don't know if that's the right term. So it is sitting outside of the straddle expected move. So the straddle's like 450, 475. And these are sitting like $2 outside of that. So I don't know what this person expects that's going to happen in AIG. All I know is they're expecting something, you know, like earth-shattering, basically. Like, that's the only way I see these calls pay. I mean, you know, what makes, I mean, when was the last time that move has moved $7 in a month, that stock? Last month. Okay. So last month, so if you go from middle of January, it was 67.94 and it's trading 73.08, which I could only describe as a power move. So it'd have to do what it did in 2 months in basically 6 weeks. So, I mean, I'm not going to say it can't happen, but, you know, considering the market move we've had at the beginning of the year, you would have to have something pretty extraordinary. So since mid-December, the stock has moved $8. So essentially, you would need to move, $4 or $5 for those calls to make some, any kind of money, maybe double in value. So it's possible, but you would need to see a move, on par with what we've had the last 3 months in a couple of weeks. So that's kind of, I'm not saying it can't happen. I just think it is definitely not a path of least resistance right now.
What you're saying is it can't happen. It literally cannot be done. This is fool's gold. So that's what you're saying.
I mean, I could be stronger with my words, but I don't think after trading for 34 years, can't happen is not something I use anymore.
No, especially in the last couple of years. That's been ripped from all of our vocabulary.
Yeah, can't happen. There's no way you could trade and say there's no way that's can happen. You just wait till tomorrow. Like at this point, tomorrow anything can happen. So I think if you trade with that in mind, you might survive a little longer. So just when you say there's no way that's going to happen, like sure enough, I mean it's like 5,000 SPX. Right now, I can't even imagine what the news would have to be to get the SPX to drop 130 points at this point. I'm sure it can happen. Of course it can happen, but dang, if I can believe what it would take to actually make the market move down and for VIX to stay over 18 for over 16 for more than 2 days. I don't know what it is, but it ain't happening today.
That it is not. What is happening, though, are some puts, apparently, in our old friend Patterson UTI Energy Inc., ticker symbol P10, PTEN, trading $11.80 today, up about a nickel today. So not exactly a banger day out here for P10. Let's see, a year ago, they were actually at about almost a little over $15, $15.12. So they're off about 3 1/3 or about 22%. So been a bit of a rough year, but that doesn't tell the whole story. They sold off to their low for the year pretty quickly. By May, they got to 970. That was their low for the year. Then they rallied again to their high for the year shortly thereafter. On August and then September, both times they touched $16. They hit $16.18 in September. So they had a nice summer. And then right back down again to $9.89 again. So right back near to the lows again in beginning of January before rallying now to where they are right around $11.80. So they're off 22% net on the year, but they've made a few goes, including being green on the year for most of the summer out there. So intriguing stuff out there. What did we find out there today? A pretty sizable one, Mr. Rock Lobster. Somebody coming in this morning looks like, and probably selling about 34,210 of the April 10 puts, getting 14 cents for those. It's about a 46 vol. The stock was pretty much exactly here, $11.79. It hasn't budged since this trade went up. The market was about a dime at 20. So, I mean, it is possible. We had the Flow Master on here last week. He talked about a customer who found a firm that was willing to facilitate them, and so they effectively sold their calls on the offer. It happens. This could have easily been, a sale at a much better price here, or they could have actually bought them at a discount. All things are possible in this market, especially for a trade of this size. But one of those things that looks like a duck and quacks like a duck. It's probably a duck. There are earnings, but they are after this announcement. They are on May 1st. So once again, not drawing your line in the sand through the earnings announcement. Probably a smart decision. But Mr. Rock Lobster, what do you think about this one? Pretty sizable line in the sand, it seems like, in your favorite P10.
I was looking at, I follow this guy on Twitter, Dan Pickering. He's a oil and gas analyst. He's really good. And usually he's like, I think, what is it? This is like, he calls it Merger Monday or something when they have to, for it's kind of a calendar anomaly or something when they announce mergers and acquisitions in oil and gas space. I don't know exactly the reason, but he's a good follow on Twitter. A lot of industry knowledge. And this customer is doing the same thing I am, but I'm not selling 34,210 of them. I'm selling puts in, you name it. You name the oil and gas stock. So I'm just trying to acquire shares while the market is chasing AI madness, which I'm writing that, but to not to a huge degree, but still some. But the selling puts in the oil stocks, is just adding to some monthly income. So I think as a trade, I like this trade idea. Earnings just came out, stock gapped $1. Like the 10 strike looks hard to breach, although it's not a lot of money. It is that number for a put seller. They like 250 to 500,000 bucks on their right, and with their ability to get the stock eventually. So I can't say they're getting 1% to sell their April puts. So 1.4% on the 10 strike. I mean, it's not sexy, but if you're in a business that needs cash flow every month, or you buy some stock, it's for a disciplined seller, it could work. And I think the oil and gas industry for this type of play, although selling puts in NVDA feels super sexy. You sell an $18 put, and then 3 days later it's $4. It feels great when the stock's going up $50 a day, and then one day the party will stop, and that put you sold for $15 goes to $125. So I would just caution everybody that is on that train, enjoy the train, but eventually the train will stop running. So just be mindful of that. So I tend to sell puts in more boring stocks that it's the value investor side of me comes out for that kind of stuff. But I think this is a decent line in the sand put sale. I mean, by any standard, it's kind of textbook as a sale.
Who says getting income isn't sexy, sir? And less chance of getting your face ripped off. That's a double win out there in good old PTEN. Let's see if Uncle Mike's got a triple win for us, because it's time for a little bit of the old strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the strategy block. And as luck would have it, a little birdie just told me that Uncle Mike plans to spend his segment this week talking about just blasting away at all those juicy puts out there in NVIDIA. Mr. Uncle Mike, have at it, sir.
Well, what I do want to do is I'm going to bring back something that I used to talk about on the show quite a bit, but I haven't talked about in a while, a collar on Apple. Does that ring a bell to you at all, Mark?
What is it, 2010? What's going on?
So, all right. So we have a variety of different things we're doing with Apple. In some cases, we have covered calls on. In some cases, we're just holding it. And in one case, I shouldn't say one case, it's definitely more than 100 shares, but we are doing a collar on it. And so what we did was in this instance, a couple months ago, probably about a month ago, Apple's getting a little bit long in the tooth. So what we had decided to do was buy a 170 put and sell a 220 covered call. And we went out to July to do it. And by doing that, we actually got a 11-cent credit for doing that. Not necessarily what we were looking to do, but with Apple at the levels with which it was at in this one specific client's instance, it made sense to do it because of the amount of exposure that Apple actually had to his account. Now, of course, Apple, and at the time I believe Apple was in the mid to upper 190s, if I remember correctly. But as everyone knows right now, Apple is definitely down from its highs. It's not knocking on the door of 200 as of right now. And so what's happening, the value of the put is going higher and the value of the call is going lower. And so we can get out of this trade right now, or the collar, not the stock, but the stock, because we bought it a long, long time ago, we could get out of that for a profit. But from the time we put on this long put and short call, no question about it, we can get out of that for a profit. But I still don't feel comfortable having no hedge in Apple till July in this specific instance because of the amount of exposure we have in this one account. So a couple of things with which I'm looking at. Number one, will Apple snap back to the 220 level by July? I really don't think it will. So there could be some adjustments to make, but in reality, if I don't take off the 220 call and Apple does go above 220 by July, it's not exactly the worst thing in the world. But let's look at this objectively. We got into this trade. The 170 put was trading at 287. The 220 call was at $2.98. Once again, I'm not trying to specifically pitch a strike or a stock or anything like that. I'm just doing this for educational purposes, and I don't even know what move I may or may not make with this. I just see Apple today. When it has a move like this, I have to look at it, which I plan to later this afternoon. So right now, the 170 put is trading at $6.45, and the 220 call is trading at 56 cents. So initially, we got a 11-cent credit for taking on this trade. If we were to get out of it today, we could get a $5.90 credit. Heck of a deal. We actually made some money on the way down with this. Now, of course, we lost more on the Apple holdings itself, but it's a longer-term holding, so that's just the way it goes. So what are some things with which we could do with this? Well, a couple of things with which I'm looking at, and I've done this before, is let's say that we want to stay out at the same expiration month. I can actually buy back that short call. If I want to stay in July, I can buy back that short call for, in this case, let me look here, 56 cents. And then at the same time, I could sell a 130 put for 60 cents, even a 4-penny credit. Now, what that essentially does is that then gives this client unlimited upside with Apple. And now he's in a position to where it's a zero-cost put spread, meaning he'll have protection from 170 down to 130, $40 worth of free protection. Now, granted, he took on the obligation of the covered call initially, but if you're looking at this trade from start to finish, he's then at a point to where he has no upside limitations, and he has a $40 cushion to the downside should something even worse happen to Apple. Couple other things with which you could do if you want to get really cute with this. You could maybe roll down the call and then, buy to close the call, maybe sell a closer to the money covered call for a shorter time frame. And then when that comes out, then he has a free put option if you want to look at it that way. I tend not to want to do that if I can help it, but that is another choice with which you can do it. Or another choice, just let it sit there. It's doing its job. Why waste things on it? Why try and overcomplicate things? Why do you want to shift things just for the purpose of shifting? I'm not sure as what I'm going to do with this yet. I will look at it later this afternoon. I typically like to do things like this closer to the close, but that is kind of a peek inside the mind of old Uncle Mike and things with which he looks at when you get a 3% drop in a stock with which we have a collar on. And that is the strategy block for today. First one of March.
First one indeed, as we keep on rolling and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, since we are coming up against it, we're going to do a combo of Around the Block as well as where folks can go to learn more about what you got cooking. Let's start with the Rock Lobster, sir. Where can folks go, or I should say, before we get there, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of this week? I think you hinted at it at the start of the show, but what are you keeping an eye on until the Thursday show? And B, where can folks go if they want more Rock Lobster goodness in their lives?
Yeah, my products are doing really great this year. Well, they do great every year, but we're starting off with the band. So if you want to learn how to trade in a risk control way, come on over to optionbid.com, 888-TRADE01. What am I looking at? waiting for Powell to say his stuff, and that way we can just hurry up and get to 5,200. Because it's another week. Every day has a Y at the end, and right now, stocks go up because I want to hear TOSAW say, never in the history, next Monday when we're trading 5,200.
All right, check them out. OptionPit.com is the place to go. And Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on for the rest of this week until the Thursday show? And B, where should folks go if they want more Uncle Mike goodness in their lives?
You know what? It sounded, when you said the rock lobster goodness in your life, I don't know. I'm feeling musical today for some reason because it sounded like a 70s Brady Bunch theme song. I got the rock lobster goodness in my life. So anyway, just figured I'd share that.
Wow, I didn't think we'd get a musical segment from you at the end of the show. That makes it impressive.
I feel touched.
I got the rock lobster goodness in my life. Well, what more do you want? So, I just waiting on Powell for the week. We'll see where we're at with everything and see if we have another historic moment in the markets later this week. For now, we're flat. And then if you want to learn about how to get some more Uncle Mike goodness in your life, check it out, stcharleswealth.com, or follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. Would love to have a conversation with any of our audience members.
There you go, listeners. That's going to do it for us on the old OB today. Not going to do it for us on the network today, though. Back in a little bit if you're hanging out in the live hangout. We'll be back in a little bit with Mr. Greg Magadini to hold court on all things crypto, volatility, skew, all the madness that's going on out there. Bitcoin, who knows what the hell it is today. You got to tune in to the Crypto Rundown to find out, except for Uncle Mike. He wants no part of that show. But everybody else, Crypto Rundown. And you know what? We don't want any part of him. Nana, nana, boo-boo to him. So check it out. Crypto Rundown coming up in a little bit. Back again tomorrow, of course, with our usual array of content. A pro Q&A goodness. Wednesday, doubleheader of options boot camp. So be there or be square, especially if you're in the pro. You get access to all that right away. So that should be fun. Thursday, of course, back again for episode 2 of our bi-weekly option block extravaganza. We'll see you then. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.